I see a lot of docs that they say they want to scale, they say they want to do multiples just because it's the new thing. It sounds cool, right? And they think there's a lot of opportunity in it, which there is. Don't get me wrong, there is. But you gotta establish the leadership mindset, the vision, the grit to get up early, stay later than everybody else. Once you establish the systems and process and have the machine going, it you can pull back and it's easier, right? But in those first 10 years that it took me, it was showing up early, staying late.
What does it actually take to build a 7-figure chiropractic business? How important is your mindset, and when should you be thinking about scaling? In this episode, Dr. Reed shares on these insights and more, drawing from his own experience from building multiple clinics and coaching hundreds of chiropractic business owners. Let's dive right in. Where I'd want to start is something that it honestly shocked me, and I feel like we shared childhood trauma here, but why did you repeat the first grade?
Dude,
What happened?
I couldn't do my last name. I couldn't read. So yeah, I
couldn't read,
or at least the teacher up some insufficiencies in my ability to read in the first grade. So yeah, man, you asked me about sharing stories, and I think all things in our life doing his mid 50s now, you look back and you recognize events that happen and see current positions in your life based on those past events. And I think a lot of folks, put on the victim mindset instead of like, hey, how did I become a better person and where God intended me to be today based on those experiences. And so, yeah, man, I look, I didn't understand it until I was way into my adulthood, but look back at that experience of having to redo the first grade. I was a new big kid, right? So bigger than most of the kids at the school, and was new to the town. My parents had moved into this city from out of state. And so, it was tough because I built relationships with dudes and you started to try and find your tribe, navigate that whole thing as first grader. And then like come back the next summer and you're not with those people. You're with people that were kindergarten the year before or whatever. And so we're having to start all over. But again, the upside of that thing is it aligned me with several things in my life that, that benefited me and supported me to becoming who I've become today from, again, allowed me to mature into my body so that I was able to, down the road, achieve my scholarship that I, achieved to play ball in the Pac-10, allowed me to obviously get caught up in my schooling to be able to go to professional school and become a doctor. And then most importantly, like it synced me with my wife. We met our freshman year. So had I been, kind of the story in that is I actually moved out of that district my sophomore year to go to a school that had, at the time, a higher performing sports programs. And so I was only there through the 9th grade. So had I stayed course and left, we would have never met. And so I think, when we look at the big picture of things that happen in our lives, there's always some benefit to it, if not a lot. So.
You have such a, I want to say, impressive mentality around like this, just like constant hunger. And it's something that I'm sure hasn't always been there, and maybe it has, but I guess I'm almost curious as to like where that happened for you. And just to give you context, and the reason I bring this up is because like people look at me now and they're baffled at like what my history used to be. Cause like I was very much so nerd, playing video games, no future, very lazy. Yeah. Like never worked out, like nothing. And there was a moment that things changed for me, but I'm curious about you is like, was there a moment for you that things really transformed? Cause like you're a go-getter.
Yeah. I would say, brother, that there's, in my book that's coming out, I talk about moments of impact that was one of them in my life. And I had several. And so I think just the desire almost to prove people wrong, because I was that kid that's like, hey, he's an athlete. He's not going to succeed at life. Just all the stuff that gets said is young, mean kids, tend to be. And so I had a little bit, I wouldn't call it a chip, but just that internal, like, all right, I'll show you type of mentality. And again, using those moment of impacts as ways to inspire you to go a little bit deeper into who you are. And I like to say, learn from them, leverage them, learn from them, lean into them, learn from them, and then leverage them for becoming, going out there to decide a better person. And so I had multiple little impacts throughout my childhood, young adulthood, and even adulthood that you grow through. And so, yeah, man, I think, I don't know if that answered your question or not, brother, but
it does in a lot of ways. I'd be curious if there was any like specific moments you want to share, because like I would say of the hundreds of people that I've had on the show is that's a very common pattern I see is a chip on their shoulder. Yeah. Like whether you want to admit it or not is like, it's common. Like there's this degree of wanting to prove other people wrong. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Robert Glover, and he talks about like tapping into more or less like the dark side, like tapping into that energy. There's a lot of energy there.
Using that frustration, fear, whatever you want to call it, as a motivator to do more. Yeah. I mean, another one I don't mind talking about. Yeah. I had, and then again, being an athlete, kind of my identity was around being an athlete. I was the kid that was known that was, hey, he's going to play ball somewhere or whatever. And then going into my senior year, tearing my ACL and go from, at the time when they did stars, I was 5-star recruit, getting recruited by, Notre Dame, USC, Penn State, like all the Pac-12 or Pac-10 schools at the time. And then, all of a sudden, all of those schools going away, to the point of like Stanford calling me a hospital. Hey, kid, sorry to hear about your injury. We're going to go a different direction. And so really like, what the heck now? Like that was my ticket to out of this place. That was my ticket to, my parents couldn't afford it for me to, to go to school. That was my way out. Right. And having to lean into that and grow through it. And, thankfully Washington State honored their word with me, said, hey man, we know you're going to get through this. We're going to bring you over. So honor our word and give you a scholarship. And then I went through some transitions over there as well. But that was a big shift in having to lean in and like, all right, like, how am I going to grow through this? Like what's on the other side of it for me? And, I like to, it says it develop your rhino skin, right? Those adversity things makes you get a little bit more calloused, I guess, to some stuff and just kind of that grit and learning to, embrace that suck and get better. So.
Yeah, there's so much to be said about like how those moments of rejection or failure can sometimes like break people, but oftentimes it can be also the fuel that drives them to want to achieve things. Because like even if I reflect on myself, I think a lot of the reason I work so hard now is I feel behind. Like I feel like there were so many years in my life where like I just kind of almost wasted it away with like what I was mentioning before of the video games and just being very lackadaisical and lazy and poor work ethic and all the things. And so I think there's just like this hunger now of like, man, I feel like I wasted these years. And so I don't know. I now wonder if like I'm ever able to turn it off and like maybe I'll just follow in your footsteps of like I tell my girlfriend all the time is like I don't think I'll ever retire. Like I
don't think we should.
I don't see that future.
I mean,
Yeah.
obviously life will look different when you get to that position, but I don't think, I'm in a place where I could do that. And it's just not, it's not settling. I don't think that's how it's supposed to be. I think the sooner you quit moving, quit acting, quit learning, quit doing, you start dying. And so I think not retiring, just creating the life and be yourself in a place where you can do all the things that you love to do, but you're not retired. You're still doing things. So.
Well, yeah, I saw you just did a Hyrox.
Yeah,
Congrats,
a
by
few
the
weeks
way.
back. Yeah, I just signed up for another one. So yeah, man, I love it. It's good stuff. It's always finding
What?
something to go into that pain cave and push myself. So that was definitely a way.
I've done 4 of them. I
Right
don't.
on.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah. I don't think I'll do another one. I finally hit a PR I was trying to hit from day one, and so now I'm like, I'm good. I don't need to do more wall balls. Like that's fine.
it's a running for me,
But
man. The wall balls, whatever. It's a running. It's like, oh, almost 6'3", 230 pounds. That running big dude moving around that circle. So I'm gonna do.
you are,
Yeah,
yeah. You got that linebacker
yeah.
body, man.
Yeah. So
Big
I'm gonna
dude.
doing down in November. So.
Oh wow. Why do you choose Texas? What? So you've
It's
done
just
2.
timing with the location. And then I think my son wants to do one with me. So I think we're going to do Anaheim in December, the month following as a partner one. So
I
same,
like
same.
it. Do you do
Okay,
regular or
cool.
pro
What's that,
division?
bud?
Are you regular or pro division?
I did regular the first time, and I think I'm going to do the pro. I got to decide if I want to do the pro and just because it's the strength part is not the issue. It's my running. So I either do the pro because I can handle the weights or like, hey, let's beat my 121 time and hit my goal of what I wanted to hit. So.
Well, I would highly encourage you to do the pro, and this is actually a great segue for me where I'm kind of going with this
Cool.
conversation, is that what I found once I started doing the pro division is that the people, the guys and girls for that matter, that you get to run and compete with are just on a much higher caliber. Like they're very athletic people, and I found it to just be a lot more fun and exhilarating for me personally
Okay.
because I'm very
Yeah.
competitive.
Yeah.
I'm sure you are as well. And I just found like having those other people around, I was like,
I better
whoa,
go.
like this is a yeah. It's just like business,
Yeah.
right? It's like you get around people that are at a higher caliber
Elevate.
and it raises you up. Like that's just what happens. And so I just found a ton of fun doing the pro division,
Okay.
which leads me to my question is like, I know you're huge on the 6 inches between your ears, right?
Yep. Mindset.
Like how you see the world. And I'm curious as to like other chiropractic business owners and people that want to build 7-figure businesses and chiropractic clinics and have multiple locations and have those sorts of ambitions in their life. Like what kind of mindset does it take to do something like that?
Man, first is really got to get clarity on what you want to build. I see a lot of docs that they say they want to scale. They say they want to do multiples just because it's the new thing. It sounds cool, right? And they think there's a lot of opportunity in it, which there is. Don't get me wrong, there is. But you gotta establish the leadership mindset, the vision, the grit to get up early, get up earlier, stay later than everybody else. It's not. And once you establish the systems and process and have the machine going, it you can pull back and it's easier, right? But in those first 10 years that it took me, it was showing up early, staying late, doing the stuff. People thought I was nuts. It was before they were cool. I'd have buddies like, Paul, why do you want two offices? It's hard enough to manage one. I'm like, well, I have five now. So, it got, it's kind of like I only have two kids, but I hear like two is hard, four is easy. And so it just, yeah, man, you really gotta establish the mindset that it's going to take work. And it's like anything in life, right? Nothing comes easy, or most things don't come easy, that are worth doing. And so really, forging the mindset and working on your mind every day, really getting up and being disciplined with that morning routine, seeing your day before the day, doing your visualization, your meditations, all the stuff to keep your mind sharp, because it's not for the lack of heart. You gotta forge that. So
I'm glad that you said the 10 years, because it's the classic like overnight 10-year success type deal.
yeah,
I was just talking to another chiropractor about this exact same thing, and I'm always glad to be reminded of that, is because like I think for most people, especially chiropractors, or even as me, as somebody that was in the healthcare industry, is I think it takes like 5 years to even figure out what you're sort of
yeah,
doing, and then probably takes like another 10 years to actually kind of make it successful.
yeah.
And so it's just like understanding time frames and time horizons and being realistic around it. But I'm curious then, so like let's say somebody is in that 0 to 10 year range of their
Yeah.
practice. Obviously, like the hard work is a big piece of it. And I think I agree. I was telling my girlfriend just the other day, is like I think most business owners have to be okay with working evenings and weekends. Like it's just kind of the
Yep.
territory.
Vacation.
Especially in the
Yep.
beginning.
Engagement.
Right.
Like, yeah.
But for
Yeah.
sure. So, but what are you like doing, and what are you thinking about, and what are the mindsets, and what are maybe some even like the tactics in those like 0 to 10 year range that somebody should be thinking about?
Man, but tactics would be establishing what you want, systems of process in your, especially in the chiropractic profession. There's so many directions you can go, but really laying out. And my office evolved from my very first office I opened to the office I had when we started to scale was generally the same, but we had added some different features and services. But really, that infrastructure is the key, and keeping it simple. The other thing is, keep it simple, saints, like really simplifying the process that is reproducible and reportable. That's, the other thing is you not being at a facility in a location. You have to, one, understand your numbers and be able to look at those numbers and manage a team member from those numbers, and knowing what the business is or isn't doing based on those numbers. And chiropractors are terrible with numbers. They don't like looking at the numbers. And so you have to be a steward of your numbers and understand your numbers. And then again, keep the process simple. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why
I,
do you think
oh,
people
good
are
point.
so bad about the numbers?
You know what? Honestly, I don't know, but you should be able to, like, if I asked you what your revenues, your percentage margins, and all that stuff, you should, like, I know my numbers and knew my numbers and looked at them daily and weekly and monthly and quarterly and yearly. And most docs don't. And I think I think some of it is fear of, like, they don't really understand what it means. They see some money in the bank account, but just because you have money in the bank account doesn't mean that you're profitable and you're a thriving, successful business. Just means you have money in the bank account and you have a job, and not the freedom that a business brings. And then two, like, just the responsibility of it. They just don't understand it, not making the time to understand it. And I didn't either. Like, I had to grow into that. I've had, hired my first mentor 6 months before I opened my first business, and have had mentors throughout my entire career to this day. And I think that's the other, and what I'm seeing today, a trend is it's less valued to have a mentor, even though that's the space that I'm in now. Like, people just don't see the value. And like, I've paid the dummy tax for the last 28 years. I know what not to do. Like, here's the things I can help you avoid and shorten your learning curve and expedite your growth and success, accelerate it. And so leaning into that too, is a lot of people just don't today. They think, oh, I can find it on YouTube and watch it and do it, which is just isn't the same. Or AI, I'm going to drop in AI and it's going to tell me what to do. Well, it's yes and no. It's not the same. So
No, not at all. Because there's a degree of subjectivity that needs to be taken into consideration. Is like we're all wrapped up in our own mental BS, and you need somebody to be able to look at you objectively from the outside and go, "Hey, bro," or "Hey, girl," like clearly you're doing this wrong. We should talk
yeah.
about it.
And we have thoughts,
And
right? We get into rhythm. We get It's not necessarily complacency because I think at heart most people aren't complacent or don't want to be complacent. We just get blind spots though. We just get into rhythms and habits that aren't serving us to move the needle, and we just don't see them because it's been part of what we're doing and continue to do. And take somebody like you said, like, yo, it's not serving you to get where you need to be. Let's stop that. Or, hey, you need to implement this. So
Yeah, I would say as somebody who does marketing, and it's one of the reasons that I started working with like just more, I guess, like the higher earning type clientele is because they understand one very simple framework, and it's called ROI. And I think a lot of people don't understand ROI of like if you hire a coach or an agency or whatever it is for a certain amount of money, if it makes you that money back, it's worth it every single
yep,
time. And
spend
it
nine,
almost
spend
always
nine to make
does.
10.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious then. So the numbers that I often have, I think about and have conversations with, and the ones that are always very important to me is like lifetime value. What is a patient worth to you? And also like cost acquisition, right? Is like those are two things that I'm constantly looking at in terms of like the space and industry and where I serve people. I'm curious for you though, is like, what do you recommend? Like, what numbers should somebody be watching, paid attention to? What should they
Yeah,
know?
so for sure those, right? And those, I would tell you, those are two that a lot of times when you say, "Hey, what's your LTV?" What are you talking about? Like lifetime value or CPA. What's your cost per acquisition? Yeah, that people just don't understand that. So that those for sure, but those are a little bit deeper than most folks. But minimum, they should be monitoring and tracking their new patients. How many of those new patients start care, right? What is your start rate or conversion rate? Your weekly visits, how many people you're seeing per week, what's your kept appointment rate. So if you have 100 people scheduled, did 90 of them show up? Did 70 to 60, like knowing your percentage of kept appointments. General gross ones is what did you service each day, each week, each month? What did you collect? Those are kind of the basics. But then again, I encourage docs, like those are the minimum standards you should be knowing. But then I broke down, to your point, being a marketing group, I'm like, okay, what came from my SEO? What came from social media? What came from my internal referrals? Like what came from my external events? Like knowing where each of your new acquisitions came from. And then yes, you could figure out your global cost per acquisition, but then micro it down and like, hey, I spent this on ad spend plus my agency fee and it generated this. And I sent a team member out to do this event and I had to pay them this much per hour and it cost me this much to do the event and this much in swag. And I acquired like really knowing your numbers. So those are some of the basics. But then if you really want to, like you said, go deep or micro, then knowing your CPA, your lifetime value, your dollar per visit collected. Like I'm like, hey, what's your collection per visit average? What do you mean? I'm like, well, take your total revenues and divide it how many people you saw this month, and that'll tell you how much you made every time somebody walked through the door. And so that, and then another giant outsiders, docs don't know what their stop loss is, like figuring out what it costs every time somebody walks in, just based on their expenses. And so figuring out like every time somebody walks through your door, what did it cost for that person to walk through the door? So
Hmm.
yeah.
Those are good. Those are
Yeah.
solid. I was running the numbers the other day on like what it actually takes to have $1 million practice, and it's funny. It was once I ran the numbers on it, it was surprisingly simple to like understand what steps somebody should take.
Yeah.
Like really, what it came down to is like assuming you're already seeing patients and you have a decent patient caseload and you're doing okay. Is like most clinics, oftentimes, depending on like what your business model is, only need like anywhere from like maybe I don't know, 10 to 15 new patients a month.
Yeah.
And
The
it's like,
retention.
that's not that many, right? And like, it's like, if when you know that, and it's like, and that's what it takes to have $1 million practice,
Yeah.
it's like,
And you
oh,
gotta
like
think
all
of
of
a
a sudden
million
become
people. Like I only need this many of them to succeed. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And just like having a little clarity around, that's why I think the numbers is like, it feels overwhelming at times, but when you break it down and it actually makes things very simple.
Really
Cause
not.
like, then it makes all decisions very easy. Is like, well, then how do we get 10 new patients? It's like, well, we could get 3 here and we could get 3 here and we could get 3 here. And then it's like, then we only need one
Yeah.
more. Like, problem
Yeah.
solved. Like,
And the funny thing
anyways.
is, man, is like docs don't even, so they don't, you just reverse engineered what it take, right? So you take $83,300 a month, which gets you to $1 million practice. And like, okay, so what if I'm seeing 100 a week? That's 400 a month. I got to divide that by 400. That's going to give me my dollar per visit that I need to be at to be able to get there. It's just, it's really simple, basic math, but a lot of times they don't make the time to think like that. So
It helps so much too. I mean, I recommend the listener, if you are in that circumstance and you don't understand the numbers, is like it makes making decisions much easier. It makes everything much
takes
easier.
the emotion out, right?
Um,
Because we're emotional beings, and when you make emotional decisions, you usually make bad decisions. And so switching the side of the brain and make an educated decision based on revenues and where you want to go.
Totally. So let's switch back into those 10 years of like having a solo location. What's maybe some of the big mistakes you made in the 10 years of practice that maybe would have fast tracked you to being able to get to that place of like where you have the systems and you have the team and you can think about opening another location? Like what was the big mistakes you made and what would you have told
I
yourself?
think I think one of the biggest mistakes, it's funny, I just had this with a coaching client this morning, is not delegating enough. Even though my mentor like encouraged me and supported me and nudged me, like, bro, you need to delegate some of that stuff because we can't do it all. So if you truly want to expand, I think had I delegated and trusted other team members or more faster, it would have sped up my process. But again, started business when I was whatever 27, late 26, 27 years old. Kind of holding on to everything because it's your baby and your investment, and so we become control freaks and don't let go and let them. Obviously, you need to give them the framework and the structure and the things they need to do and support them in it, but like letting them screw up and then help them learn from that screw up to allow you to continue to grow. And we can't, again, man, limitations of time that matter. I can only do so many things and be so many places, and I'm not delegating, we're not growing. And so yeah, I would say if I was to go back to 1997, I would tell myself to delegate more sooner. So
I'd be curious as to like what the thoughts and emotions and red flags or telltale signs for that are, because I can tell you, speaking from personal experience, I'm a pretty generally stoic, motionless guy. I'm very calm. Very few things stress me out. I don't have highs. I don't have super low lows. I'm pretty steady for the most part. But there was a point within probably the last year here where my girlfriend noticed I was stressed out of my mind, which is a very rare emotion for me. And it was because of exactly what you're talking about, is that I was not doing a good job of getting the things off of my plate that I should have been getting off my plate months before. And it was emotionally very painful for me. So I'm curious for you of like, how did you know and
all
what were the
all,
signs
all
for you?
those things, man. One being stuck, hitting plateaus and not moving through those things, like in regards to business growth, like why am I even stuck at this spot? And then having to like self mentorship supporting me and then just self-reflecting, like, oh, well, I'm doing this, and this, and I'm not operating out of my zone of genius. I'm great on patient communication. I'm great on building relationships, getting those people to start care, attracting them, but I don't need to be doing checking on the billing. I don't be checking on the mail. I don't be paying the bills. I don't need it, all this stuff. And so really seeing the same thing, man, just pain points, lack of growth, right? And then just fatigue and frustration of like, and the other thing I see that blocks people, and I hear, docs complain and say they're getting quote unquote burnt out or fatigued. And that's usually because that one, they're not letting go of enough things, and or two, haven't established systems and processes. So they're trying to memory manage and coach and monitor all of the stuff of a business, every day, instead of like knowing when things are done and supposed to be done and who's reporting it and whatnot. So yeah.
I'm assuming you're familiar with Dan
Oh
Martell.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I
Yeah. I
buy
mean, that
back buy
was
back your time's a great book. And Ron, overseeing my first coach, helped me with some of that stuff. He's like, Paul, why are you mowing the lawn? You can pay somebody to mow the lawn. You don't need to be mowing the lawn. I'm like, you're right. He goes, unless you really enjoy it and really have the time, you can have somebody do that for you. Just a simple example of like, oh, it took me an hour to mow the lawn this week when I could have been, working out or spending time with my wife or doing marketing for the business. You don't need to do those low level things unless you really, 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 really enjoy them. So
I mean, I think that's another. I mean, we were talking about numbers and data and understanding that stuff. Is I think another number that I like to have that I have conversations with people about is like, what is your time worth?
mhm.
And put a monetary value to that. Because if you're doing something that you could hire somebody for less of whatever you believe your monetary time is worth, you probably shouldn't be doing it unless you enjoy it. That's a different conversation. But like, if you don't enjoy it, then stop doing it.
And one, it's usually takes you twice as long because you don't enjoy it or you're not as good at it. So find somebody that enjoys it and is really good at it and let them do it. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like
I
straight
mean,
lines up my
believe me,
lawn. So I was a little anal, so I held on to that a little bit longer than it should be because I got to have those lines perfect. But then I finally found somebody who could do it for me, and I lowered my standard. And I would say a teaching lesson too for business owners is your team members are never going to function to the level and degree of you, and lowering that expectation of their output or performance, whatever term you want to look at. I that was a pain point for me for a long, long, long time. Why are these docs that are working with me, not performing the way that I performed? And they just never will. And so you have to like not lower the benchmark, but just lower your own internal expectation of their outcomes or performance, because they're not you and they're not going to perform to the same degree, and being okay with it. Because again, quote unquote Dan's book, it's buying back your time. It's allowing you to leverage them to be able to do other things and grow in different areas. So
Yeah, I think the exact phrase is something along the lines of like 80% done by somebody else is 100% awesome,
exactly
basically.
right. Yep.
So speaking of practice owners, is like again to that 0 to 10 year frame. So what's like telltale signs for a practice owner to know that they should be looking to hire or they should be looking to stop being a single practitioner or to bring in an associate or like what should somebody be considering?
Yeah, I think for me was my desire to serve more people in my community. And again, I can only see so many people in a certain amount of time. And so when I reached that point, it's like, okay, I need to bring on somebody that can, we can continue to grow and serve our community and not be limited by time because unfortunately you are limited by time. You can only see so many people in a certain amount of time. And so that was for me and our businesses, that was kind of the tipping point. Like, I can only, if I want to reach X amount of people, I'm only going to be able to do this much of it. But if I add a team member, we can expand that. Add a location, we can expand that. And that's how we got to where we got. So that's usually the key. And I see chiros get complacent, like they just get comfortable with where they're at. And they, in my opinion, they kind of lose sight of why they started their journey to begin with. And usually most chiropractors start with a heart to serve their community and help people experience health the way health was designed to be experienced. And we just, for fear of having to go to the next level, hiring more people, the responsibility and training and financial commitment that comes with that, they pull back and just get stuck and complacent and comfortable with that, where they're at that level. And so versus where I was like, okay, well, I did that, but I want to continue to reach more. So then I brought on a couple docs in my main office. I'm like, okay, well, now we're losing people the other side of our community after, we have attrition over time. So let's plug another office over there and capture those people and keep them in our fold. Well, hey, now let's do another office in this side of town. And so that was, for me, those were kind of the benchmark indicators.
Of the like, I'm sure hundreds of chiropractic business owners that you've worked with, do you find it common? You use the word complacent. Do you find that to be common? Like, do you find that chiropractors like maybe even like they reach a certain threshold of they're like, I'm good, I can pay the bills, I'm making we'll say 6 figures a year, whatever, and they're just like they're good.
Yep.
They just get complacent.
Yes and yes. I just had a text from a client that he's like, yeah, man, I haven't been participating very much. I think I'll bail when my agreement's up. I'm like, okay, what's going on? Oh, I'm good. I'm like, okay, well, there's your first problem. I'm good. I'm just doing me. I'm like, all right, man. And then they reach out with a specific pain point, wanting to grow because there's financial needs and obligations and all those things. And then like just being okay with it, So yeah, I think, and I don't know other industries to speak, that it's not in other spaces, but I firmly that it's in our, my son's going through, almost done with chiropractic school himself. And he's seeing that in his classmates, like, oh, I just want to get out and do this, and really not having a big vision. So they're already pre-framing themselves for complacency post graduation. So
you might have pre-framed me with your poster in the background, but I love this idea of I think that there's a lack of a lion to chase is what I'm seeing is like the best way that I can describe it. And it was me. And again, this isn't to me to preach or to like judge anybody of like, if you're happy, awesome for you. I'm super excited for you. But like based on what I've seen just in general, especially as like I'm in my 30s and I'll say there's a lot of men, obviously I have a lot of men that are friends that are just very complacent and they're fine and everything's good and they don't really care. And I would say is like, I think there's a lack of a lion to chase. There's a lack of something bigger than them to care about or to move towards or to like have some sort of like why or passion or purpose behind. And it's really unfortunate, honestly.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree. Actually, I have a separate men's coaching / mentorship program for that exact thing. I think dudes have gotten soft. We've gotten complacent. We've gotten weak in mind, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And it's not who we were called to be. We're called to be the head, not the tail. It's supposed to lead, like all of those things. And it's, I think we've been stretched. I think society has deprogrammed us for being who we're supposed to be a little bit. And so guys need to get, re-engaged and rechecked in. And so I agree.
Have you heard the expression of, I might butcher this, so I'm apologize, but it goes something along the lines of strong men create good times create
weak men.
Weak.
Yeah.
Weak men. Yeah, exactly.
Bad times create strong men. Yeah. Yep.
100%.
Yeah,
I feel like that's exactly what we're experiencing in my opinion. But
I think I'm seeing a little shift back towards, towards it. There's a lot of groups popping up, but yeah, I think yes, absolutely. That's exactly what we've seen.
Every time I believe that to be true, Paul, I also realize that I live in an echo chamber of like I'm around very specific people. I'm around those type of people, and if you're not one of those type of people, I sadly this is going to sound super judgmental, but I have very little time or space if you're not. And so that's a me thing. I recognize that.
I,
I'm not a super empathetic person,
I
but
am not
yeah.
empathetic at all, and I'm the same way. Put your bootstraps on and let's freaking go. Like
Yeah.
yeah. And to your point of what you said, I think, when we open up somewhere and then if like you literally over time take on the characteristics and patterns and habits of those that you're around the most. And so you really need to be careful of the businessmen, business women, business leaders, your regular friends that you're hanging out with. Like that stuff makes a time or that time, them renting space in your head is going to impact your head down the road somewhere if you're not careful. So
Totally. That's honestly like why I have so much respect for like the coaching stuff that you do is because again I recognize I'm very high judgmental in the personality type, and so like if I sense any degree of like victim mentality or anything is like I'm pretty good about just like cutting people out of my life. Almost like it's kind of sad to say, but it's
yeah,
true.
the
But
circle's pretty small too, man.
anyways,
So well, I just for those reasons, life is short. Not that we're not supposed to support, encourage, and love on those folks and guide and direct them, but man, there's life is short, and you just never know when your last day is. And being around the folks that you like being around, that are making you grow.
mm. So I want to pull back to the building of this chiropractic business that you did. So I'd be curious as to like maybe some of the marketing or patient acquisition things that you did. I know the tried and true is always providing good care and local networking and word of mouth, and I know so many practices that build on
Yeah,
that. But I feel like at some point you kind of grow past that, maybe, especially when you start bringing in other associates.
yeah,
So I'm curious as to like what did you do? What have you seen to be
yeah.
successful? Even maybe some of the coaches some of the patients you've talked to, like what works?
I think today, man, honestly, if I'm transparent with you, I think today is obviously different than when I started. I would run back in the day. It was a thing called killer ads. It was a newspaper insert, and it would produce 100 patients, right? And today that will not happen, right? And so I think today, what I coach and mentor and teach my guys, docs to do is really it's about base hits. Like you need to be doing anything and everything. You need to have your SEO presence. You need to have your, Facebook, Instagram presence. You need to be doing internal events, external events. It's just about base hits. Get one in the door, do a great job with them, provide the care that you're saying. They're going to refer one. Now you're out here on, you've reached one on Instagram, bring that one in, do a great job with that one, get them to refer one. And so it's really about making sure that you're doing all things. And then, like we mentioned earlier, being a good steward, like, okay, well, this ad, a lot of chiros I will see like, we'll just run an ad that's not producing or performing, and they continue to run that ad. They just keep doing it. I'm like, well, dude, analyze it, tweak it, modify it. And then when you find one that works, pour some gas on it, meaning more money, let it produce some more. Yeah. So I honestly, I think docs need to be doing multiple things and bringing in, people from different areas, and then obviously involved in the community, become the face and the name of your space. So yeah, that's really what I'm encouraging docs to do is everything essentially.
I like that. Yeah, and I echo that a lot as well. Is like I think that the marketing world, based on what I'm seeing, obviously, is because it's what we do. Is that it's so hard now to like understand like where somebody comes
Yeah.
from, and like how long of that sales process
Yep.
is, and how many touch points it requires, and like they want to see you on Instagram, and then they want to see a Facebook ad, and then all of a sudden it's like,
Your
oh my
website.
gosh, you're at a local
Yeah.
event. Look, there's the doctor again, and it's like what worked? Hard to say. Most of it probably. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. 100. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. But that you have to be doing, and then what I see too is docs they start to have a little bit of success, and then they pull back and stop. Like they just start to get back to that complacency. Like, oh, I've produced this much, instead of like, let's double down, put some more fuel on that fire. Let's keep it going. Like they start to pull back and coast, and then the results start to shrink. And then all of a sudden they're in crisis mode. And now it's like, oh, it's not working. Like, well, no, you stopped. And so, yeah, that's the other thing is to stop stopping. Like you have to keep doing the things day in and day out until you get to that point where do we ever arrive? No, but there becomes a point where practice, I believe, gets easier. The more established you are, the more people you're serving. It just naturally trends. And again, it's from all the things that you just spoke of, but it just naturally starts to eat and produce itself because, once you get into flow state, but you can't stop.
Do you think this is a two-part question. Do you think there's a fear of success? And also to that point of like, do you also think that like, well, I guess let's start there. Do you think like the coaches or the docs that you coach, do you find that they have a fear of success of if maybe they grow too quickly or they don't want to reach a certain point or like what's this mean? This means more stress.
Yeah,
Like, do you run
I
into that?
do. I think it's back to that complacency thing, man. With some people, it's like they know that if they succeed more, there's more responsibility, more obligation. And so some just want to stay in that comfort zone of like, this is really easy right now. My life is not very stressful. I can just keep cruising at this or this degree or whatever. So yeah, I do see that there is some fear of success or worry or what it's uncertainties, which is all stress, right? What's it going to take? Well, I have to train my team more, have to hire more, which means my overhead goes up more. They're would say lack-minded instead of looking like, yes, that team member, if you do things right, if you set yourself up for success, like I coach my docs, like, okay, if you want to hire another doctor to bring onto your team, let's establish what your base salary is in your area. Well, so let's say it's $100,000. You need to save $50,000 6 months of that doc's salary in a separate account. So when you do hire them, your training and framework and mindset shifts around how you approach them. Again, learn from the hard way. Like I'd bring somebody on and they're a liability for at least 6 months while they're learning and getting into the groove. And so early in my career, I'd be frustrated because they weren't producing. I'm like, dude, that's $7,000 that just came out of my personal income. I could have had another $7,000 myself this month instead of, so I was wrong thinking, right? Instead of like, had I prepared and like I started doing eventually saving that money. So I've already invested that money. It's gone. I know it's for them. And so just your mindset shifts when you start to think bigger and you're making an investment in them, in the business, so that you in the future, can really create what you want. So yeah.
ROI. I feel like I should. I think the on that point, so to somebody trying to get that $1 million mark and to build even past that point, I love this idea of the swamp. So like I think that when somebody's trying to get to that point, I think the and I coach me if I'm wrong here,
Yeah.
coach, but I think that a lot of times what I see is that let's say you're doing 1 million and you have 20% profit, so you have $200,000 is like the challenge you run into is that you're right is like if you want to hire somebody you're essentially going to invest all that extra money that you now have into this new person that may or may not work out and that's probably freaking
Yeah.
terrifying and so it's like how do you get past that point right like how do you get past of like I have this extra capital which is nice to just like sit on but if it sits there you're probably not going to grow
Yeah.
and so it's like having the I don't know the
Yeah.
balls, the cojones to invest in that person is probably tough for a lot of
It is
doctors. I'm sure.
again, because they're operating out of fear, operating out of lack instead of like, man, I want to serve more people and this is what it's going to take. And knowing that first and foremost, they're not confident in their own abilities to coach and mentor and inspire that person to succeed in their practice. So that's the first thing they got to overcome is like, you have the skills. And if you don't have the skills, hire a coach to help you get the skills to be able to lead and pour into that doc and help them succeed. Like one of my docs, one of my clients right now, we took him year one he's 8 years into practice. We took him from 750 to 1.5 last year. He's pacing this year to probably hit, he just hired another doctor, fourth doctor. It will probably hit 2 million this year, bringing another doc on. And he just signed a lease to expand and do a second clinic. Right. And so he's got that right mindset. Like he knows, like I've saved, I've kept my overhead low. I will invest in another doctor because I know that doctor, I'm going to pay them X, but if I get them to see this many people a week, per month, whatever, it's going to generate this, which I can leverage to grow. And so, yeah, so there's a few factors that docs, the reason they constrict and don't hire and stretch themselves. Yeah.
I think I might know the answer to this question because I think you kind of answered it based on that example that you just gave. But I'm curious as to of all the docs you've coached, who climbs the fastest and why? What made them different? Why were they unique?
Man, willingness to learn, and
Hmm.
willingness to learn. Well, what open cup, like no ego, like, hey, I know I can learn something from you here. Well, and then modeling like, hey, you did, most docs that reach out and are working with me is like, hey, I want some degree of level of success that Paul had in his life through chiropractic. So I want to be part of what he's doing. So willingness to learn, willingness to do the work, like a lot of times they just don't want to do the work. And so I think the willingness to want to learn and grow and really doing the work is what will get you to where you want to go. Again, to the end of the day, man, like all success is just work. Like, I mean, it really is. It's just getting up and doing what you know to do and keep on doing it. So
Are there certain work activities that rank above others? Again, I think I probably know the answer to this question, but and I'm sure it's obviously it's going to be stage dependent and where you're at and what you currently need to do and what the bottlenecks are. But do you have like a way for somebody to figure that out or to vet those things or like what would be those things that they should be working on, right? Because like at the end of the day, there's any number of a billion things you could do on any given day. So the question becomes is like, well, then what should I be doing? And then how does somebody figure
yeah,
that out?
present again, figuring out where you want to go and then prioritizing the activities that are going to get you there the fastest. And the things that aren't need to be last on your list or things you need to be deleted or delegated, like we spoke about earlier, but like really working in your zone of genius, doing the activities that are going to drive the outcomes and move your business to the where you want it to be the fastest. So, and again, that could be a
What's
billion things, right? And so for me, it was
right?
hiring, it was training, it was inspiring, it was outreach, and then all the behind the scenes stuff. I delegated all the bills, all this other stuff that wasn't fun, mowing the lawn.
What would you say is the main job of the leader of a practice then, right? Like you said the word inspiring, which I found interesting. Yeah, what do you think is like the main responsibility as a leader of a practice owner, of
Yep.
somebody that wants to grow a successful
Yeah.
practice?
Keeping your team on point with the mission and purpose of the practice. And again, leading them and coaching them, mentoring them, inspiring them, and helping them succeed. For me, that was the key.
I wonder, that's interesting. Man, this might be a stretch, so I apologize in
Nope.
advance. But like I wonder how much that ties to exactly what we were talking about earlier of the degree of complacency of because at the end of the day, if you want to inspire others, you can't for starters, you can't fake it. So like you have to be inspiring
Yep.
yourself, right? Like there has to be something about you that makes people want to rally around
Yeah.
you. And I think a big part of that is like doing the hard work, signing up for the
Yep.
Hyrox, doing the challenging whatever the thing is that you want to do, the ruck around, I
Yeah.
don't know,
Yeah.
name some hard ruck or something, right? Is like I think those probably in a lot of ways go hand in
Yeah.
hand.
100%. Yeah. You gotta, leadership starts with self. If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead your team, and so it's, one of the main coaching points that all my docs go through is again, self-leadership, personal development, because nobody's going to look up to somebody that's out of shape, isn't energetic, isn't taking care of themselves, doesn't prioritize the things that need to be prioritized for them to succeed, let alone the business to succeed. And so, yes, you're 100% right. They need to stretch yourself first, work on you first before you show up to the office and be the person they would look up to and admire and want to get behind and support and encourage and then and then you have to create I say that your atmosphere or excuse me, your culture creates the atmosphere. And so really creating a great culture with your team so that they can, create the atmosphere that you want. So
So this leads me to kind of where we're going with this is so if you were able to you had 5 locations and then you got acquired, correct?
yeah.
So how do you build a practice that gets acquired, right? Is like obviously I'm sure there's some degree of having the systems and processes and showing year after year of making profit in the business and things of that nature. But what's the advice you could give to somebody is like if they had future ambitions to build a chiropractic business that eventually gets
Yeah.
acquired so they can go buy a ranch on a farm somewhere, aka me, what would they do?
I would tell them not to focus on that. I wasn't focused on that. I was focused on building a successful, thriving business. And then they approached me. And I think if you enter it with that in mindset, you're really not going to build the foundations and build the habits and rhythms that you need to be able to do that someday. I would say
Hmm.
focus on fulfilling your vision, your purpose, your mission, and serve your people, serve something bigger than self. And then, the big vision will take care of itself down the road. So I didn't set out to do that. They approached me and in 100 years, I would have never thought it would happen in my profession because it hadn't happened in my profession. It's starting to happen a little bit more now. It happens a lot in PT and dental and some of the other industries, but in chiropractic, it really hadn't happened until the last few years. And so that wasn't my intention. My intention was like to really create an impact in my community and the areas that our offices are located and have a fun business. And so I think if you set out to do that, to create the structure and freedom for yourself, those other things will take care of themselves.
Good advice. Curious, why do you think the shift has changed? Why,
I
why
don't
are
know.
they
I don't
getting
know.
acquired
I,
now?
you know, I don't know. And I think it's pulled back a little bit too. I think since COVID stuff, we closed, in 2019. And I think a little bit of it is flattened right now, but I'm sure it'll come back in time. But it wasn't a thing in our industry. I think some of it is our profession is super personality driven. And so like if somebody sells, like replacing that personality is really hard. As much as you want to say you can take the personality out of chiropractic, you really can't. Like people are buying you when they come to your office. You can create the structure and the systems and processes that would appear to not be personality driven, but at the end of the day, they are. So I think that's some of, well,
Hmm.
yeah.
I mean, gosh, this brings up such an interesting topic. Are there solutions to that? I'm genuinely curious because, like, actually, I had another chiro on the show, Dr. Kyler Brown. I don't know if you know him. He's another very business savvy chiropractor like yourself, and he said everybody wants to be the guru until you don't want to be the guru anymore. And it's true,
Yeah.
right? Is like because your patients become reliant on you, and it's awesome. It's like you're the person, and you're fixing all their problems. But then the second you want to take a vacation or get bought or sell or anything, it's like you can't because it's attached to you. And so it's like, what's the
Yeah.
solution? I don't know. Maybe there isn't
You
one.
know, I don't know that there is to fix 100% of it. You know, we again had multiple doctors in my main clinic where there's a handful of us. We got our practice members comfortable with seeing any one of our doctors. It's just the way we had it set up. But the typical solopreneur, when they're just one doc, one office, or one doc in each office, it's a large portion of it is personality driven. People come in, they meet you, they build a relationship with you, and they're essentially buying your relationship. And so you can have great systems, great processes, and infrastructure that would, externally appear, theoretically appear to be non-personality driven, but practically driven. It is, there is a portion of personality in it. When you sit down and give somebody, quote unquote, the report of findings, what you found, how you're going to be help them, some of that connection and they're buying that is because of the relationship that you're established with them. And so there's always a little bit of that and always will be, in my opinion. So
It makes me think of just like the classic barbell, which I see time and time again in the business world, is like if you want the non-personal, you go to the joint, but otherwise you go everywhere else. And then the doctors that try to play somewhere in the middle probably die
yeah,
off, would be my
yeah.
guess.
Yeah. And even the joint, there's a little bit of personality because, like I have some acquaintances that, other team members and other business I have, they go to the joint and they want to see that one specific doctor and that doctor left and they quit going.
Hmm.
There still is some personality driven franchise like that. Yeah. Same thing.
Is
Envy,
there
like I want to go to Massage Envy, but I want to go to this specific therapist. There's still some personality stuff in it.
Interesting. I heard you say something once. I found it fascinating. I'm curious what I'd like you to expand on it if you're open to it. You said the lowest heart rate in the room
Dude,
wins. What does that mean to you? Where did that
I
come
learned
from?
that the hard way, man. So when conflict arises, when you haven't coached, mentored, inspired, instructed a team member or anybody for that matter, the way that you should, and they're not performing to your degree and they push back and get upset and there's some conflict, like communicating non-emotionally is best is what that means. Cause again, I've got some Italian in me and I get emotional. I am not that steady, fluid person that you said you are. I am use high, yes, I'm animated and can go from 0 to 100 in pretty short order, depending on the scenario. And so I had to teach myself to like breathe or the heart rate, then communicate instead of like, I'm kind of the fire ready aim person. Like I just go and sometimes that works out. Sometimes it doesn't. When you're starting something new, it usually does. But when you're trying to communicate to a team member or somebody and that you gotta, the lowest heartbeat in the room helps you make and communicate better decisions. So
Feel pretty good because my resting heart rate's around 38,
that's awesome.
39. So I think I'd win most
Yes,
battles.
you would. That's awesome, man.
It's funny. I'd get me so jittery, and then so I started doing more decaf for that reason exactly. But
Yeah,
so okay, so in this journey, built 5 locations, got acquired, and then now you started this for the last God, it's been a while now. You've been doing the ChiroFest thing,
yeah.
right?
That's what ChiroPractors 15, 16 years. Yeah, yeah.
Man, that's incredible. So this did that get spurred out of just the passion to continue to serve chiropractors? Is like that where that started?
100%. So I went to, there's another event that started a year or two before mine. I had been doing a monthly quote unquote philosophy meeting in my backyard to speak, and all my local docs would come and listen for an hour or two. And they're like, man, I want to play bigger. And so I went to this other event and talked to the doc that coordinated that. I'm like, man, let's do it up, the Northwest, 6 months away from yours. We'll just yin and yang it, twice a year. And he's like, nope, you go to DU, Paul. And yeah, so here we are, 15, 16 years later, we'll have, 700 people register, 50 exhibitors, 20 some speakers. Yeah, so it's selfishly just to, motivate and inspire chiropractors to play bigger. So,
You are a true glutton for
well,
punishment because
dude, yeah, it's like a
event
wedding every year,
hosting.
dude. I don't know what I'm thinking. So,
Dude, I know. Because I started building community when I first moved here to Austin, Texas 3 years ago, and started out as like kind of a weekly meetup thing, and then it was a monthly thing, and now we do quarterly because it's just a lot, man. It's like every event is like yeah, and yours are huge, like the speakers and the location and all the things. I mean, that's some people's entire job. Like the fact that you do that is like almost the side thing
yeah,
is
yeah,
baffles me.
it's a side thing. Yeah, my wife helps me about all
I
the
mean,
behind the
it's
scenes stuff, but it's constant. It's year round.
I
Like I'm
mean,
always doing something for it.
Gosh, impressive, man.
Yeah,
I wanted to throw this into the mix as we kind of like start wrapping up this conversation. Is you also started a coffee shop
yeah.
business? What the actual hell? Like,
Dude,
why?
I love coffee. You know, truthfully, I wish I would have gotten into it. Man, we've had this shop almost 8 years. Be 8 years September. I wish I would have done it 20 years ago. Then
Wow, why?
just
Why do you say that?
I geek out on it. I love coffee. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, I get
Just because you like coffee?
yeah,
That's it.
man. It's
Like,
they say chase your passions. It's one of my passions. I love it. Like again, I geek out on it, and we provide all organic coffee. I think it's one of the best in the area, and the Northwest is packed with coffee shops, right? That's where we're the hub of coffee. That's where coffee started. And I'm a little behind the game. I still think we'll expand over time. I got some opportunities in front of me if I want them. So we'll see how things work out. But yeah,
is it a good business model?
it can be. Yes, with multiples, it really can be. Yeah, it's food industry. It's not like chiropractic. The margins are not anywhere near that. But if run right and set up right, they can be. Yeah, I mean, look what Starbucks is doing, right? Obviously, there's money in it.
Yeah, I love that story. I don't know if you've followed that whole story at all of Starbucks and how it started and where they're at now, but it's pretty
Yeah, no,
amazing.
it's not down at the pier, down in the
Seattle.
pier in Seattle. Yeah, just north of me a little bit. Yeah, one little shop. Now, like hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah.
Cool. So, is there any final takeaways that you'd want the listener to get from this episode? Keep in mind, like the majority of the audience is people like yourself, right? Like chiropractic business owners and practitioners and people looking to grow and scale their business. And is there any like final points or takeaways you want to make sure somebody gets from your knowledge, people you've talked to, other people you've coached, anything of that
I would
nature?
just tell them tell you to not give up on your vision. Like don't like if it's on your heart, like chase it and find a way to make it happen. Like get the support from whoever you need to get the support from to conquer. There's just so much fulfillment that comes from really executing on the desires of your heart. I say it's a form of self-defamation. Like when we have all these goals and dreams and desires, and we quit on ourselves, like we're really kind of talking bad about ourselves. Like we're not executing on the things that would make us feel good. And even if you fail, like your attempt to do that thing will be rewarding more than you think. And so, let that obstacle, let the, as the Stewart, as you said, let the obstacle be the way, right? Their obstacle is the way. And so, lean into that thing, learn from it and leverage it. So that's what I would say.
I like it.
Yeah.
What's your plug? Where can people find you?
At Dr. Paul Reed Official on Insta is probably the most prevalent place to find me, or drpaulreed.com, my website. Yeah.
And your September is
Yeah, September
ChiroFest?
1920, 18, 19, 20, 21. Actually, I extended the evening, the Thursday night and Sunday morning. So yeah, 4 days, 4.5 days. Kids.
Damn, cool. Paul, thanks for being on the show, man.